Hey y'all, Bill Weinman here. The first thing I really want to know is who you are, where you are, is the video clear, and can you hear me okay? And if you could answer those things in the chat, I can see the chat from LinkedIn. Oh, I got to mute this thing. I'm hearing myself on my phone. So that means that works. I can see the chat from each of the platforms, from LinkedIn, from Facebook, and from YouTube. And I see some of your chat messages already. Somebody's asking if this is an Ask Me Anything. And yes, it is. It will be in a few minutes. First, I'm going to vamp for a little bit and let people show up. It's not even quite 3 o'clock here yet, which is what time it's supposed to start. Another thing I want to know is if I type in the chat, can you see it? So I'm going to type in the chat. There's a warning here that some channels may not be able to see messages from me. So I'm going to try it. Can you see this text? Yeah, and it says that it just went to Facebook and YouTube. So apparently I cannot text back to you if you're on LinkedIn. And you know, I don't know if that's true or not. I've never done this before. This is my first time, so bear with me. That's why this is really a test episode. I'm hoping to do this monthly, and if that goes well, we'll look at maybe some other messages here. Thank you, Manharsh. I hope I hope Manharsh. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Here, I think I can even show the text message. Haha. There you go. And we have Jesus here. I don't know where you're from, but apparently you're a player. All right. So glad to see that we got some people online here now. My indication says nobody is online, which is not true, that's for sure, because I am. But in any event, I'm Bill Weinman. I do courses on lynda.com. I do, and on LinkedIn Learning, which used to be lynda.com. I do mostly computer languages, things like C++, Python. Jesus is from Mexico. Mucho gusto. Yeah, computer languages like C++, Python, SQL, things like that. That's mostly what I do. I'm looking to branch out into a few other subjects perhaps later this year. We'll see how that goes. In the meantime, while you got me here, I'd really like to understand this experience a little bit. I'd like to try out a few things. So I'm going to share a screen, not because I need to, but because I'd like to experiment with it and make sure that this works. So let's see here. There it is. And so this is just my website in a Google Chrome window here. And I can scroll down, I believe. And you can see way down here at the bottom, here's where you can find links to my Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And apparently my pointer is not showing up, which is unfortunate. And if I come up here to the top, if you go to any of these tabs, go to any of the inside pages, you'll see there's those links there on the sidebar. All right, and now I can full screen this if I want to, I believe. There it is, full screen. And I can close it and bring myself back up full screen. So all of that seems to work. All right. So this isn't Ask Me Anything. I really don't know how many people are online. It says 1, and that could be me. And if that's the case, then that's the case. But if you have any questions for me, now would be the time. If I don't get any questions, I'll probably just end this thing in a few minutes. in the meantime, is there anything that I can talk about? I grew up in Los Angeles. I grew up in the 50s and 60s, so I'm old. I started out as a musician, and music has stayed with me. As you can see from behind me, I got all my guitars up there and my drums, and I have keyboards off here to the left. And I make music here when I'm not making courses for LinkedIn Learning. I excelled at math early on, and I became interested in technology. I started as an electronics engineer, mostly designing musical electronics, audio equipment, electronic musical instruments. At some point in the middle of the 70s, I became fascinated with computers and software. I built a few computers. Hello, Ali. If you have any questions, please ask me. Otherwise, I'm just sitting here vamping. And then at some point, I started doing software, and I became fascinated with software. Throughout the 80s, I did freelance programming, mostly for financial applications, banks, brokerage houses, things like that. I was one of the early users of SQL. Of course, I learned C and Unix and that stuff back in the 70s. And then in the 80s, when databases were just starting to get, really powerful, we had some of the early versions of SQL, and that's how I became familiar with SQL. Eventually, 80s and 90s passed. My sister, Linda, started a little school in Ojai, and I taught a few courses there, and that became lynda.com. And so that's where we are. This is pretty much all I do now is either online courses for lynda.com or sit here in my studio and make music, which, not much of an audience for that, but I enjoy it. And so that's what it is. Again, if you have any questions, this is an Ask Me Anything, so do go ahead and ask me anything. And and if we get some questions in the next few minutes, I'll answer them. Otherwise, I'm just going to go ahead and schedule a real AMA, maybe schedule it a week or so in advance, and we'll see how that works. I'm glad to see that this does work. Apparently, y'all can hear me and see me. Let's see, I have LinkedIn and I have Facebook. I don't have anybody from YouTube, but I really don't know how to publicize my YouTube channel, and nobody really uses it very much. I'll be publishing these on YouTube, and I'll put links to them up on my website. You can always find my website at bw.org, and it looks like that. That is a very old picture of me from when I used to have hair. I don't actually have much hair anymore. That picture is at least 10 years old, maybe, no, it's about 10 years old, because I was already losing most of my hair by then. And honestly, last time I wore a suit and tie was for my wedding, which was really just a few months ago here. Oh, I have a question here from Allie from Vienna, Austria. I learned Perl using the video tutorials of your course. I am happy seeing you, and I would like to thank you for that. By the way, 5 people are online. I hope a new upgraded version of the Perl tutorial using, and I'm going to have to close this to be able to read it, using DBI databases can be created in the future. I would love to do another Perl title, especially when DBI and databases. Unfortunately, Perl doesn't seem popular enough, and the folks at LinkedIn Learning, they have to approve any courses I do, and they have financial constraints. And so I don't think it's likely that we're going to do a Perl DBI course. I will pass it on. I've got a meeting with my channel manager next week, and I'll pass it on and see if they really want to do that. But I don't want to get your hopes up. I love Perl. It's of all the scripting languages, it's probably my favorite because it's so freeform, and it's so expressive. Things like the postfix conditionals and stuff like that are just so much more expressive than any other scripting language. The problem is that For most scripting applications, Python has really taken over, and Python's a great language too. Its object model is far more powerful than Perl's. And object-oriented programming is very popular today. It seems to have really caught on. C++, Perl, or rather Python, and even objects in JavaScript are becoming popular. For my part, as much as I do teach object-oriented languages and object-oriented programming, and I understand the attraction of them, I'm actually not convinced that it's here to stay for the long term. I think a lot of these things, like we saw, NoSQL databases were really popular for the last 10 years or so, and those are going away. And the reason for this is that object-oriented programming is really, the concept of it is designed to make the work of the programmer easier. But the cost is the cost of efficiency of programming of the runtime, because now all of that extra logic has to happen at runtime in order to accommodate something that's really just there for the purpose of the programmer. And you can do object-oriented programming without all of the overhead of something like C++ or Python. Another question here from Abdul, and I don't know where you are. Do you have any on machine learning, and what do you think about machine learning? I think machine learning is both fantastic and scary. I drive a Tesla, and my car is smarter than I am. It's basically a smartphone on wheels, but it's even more than that, because it has a visual interface and it uses cameras. It does not use LiDAR or anything like that, and it can recognize other cars on the road. It can recognize the lanes on the road. It can recognize turnoffs from the freeway. It can read signs. It can read speed limit signs and all this. The idea of it is both marvelous and scary, because I have seen Battlestar Galactica, and I know what can happen. Any one of us could be a Cylon. I don't have any particular expertise in the subject, so I will probably not be doing a course on the subject in the near future. But if the folks at LinkedIn Learning were to say to me, hey, we really want a course on this, I would do the necessary education and get one out there. It might take me a little while, but I could do it. Those are the only questions that I've had so far. I'm going to give this just a couple more minutes. I'm looking at my screen, and I have this console from the Restream.io, which is where I'm doing my broadcasting. That's the broadcasting software that I'm using. And on my console, there's a little indication of how my connection is, and it alternates between all green and all red. And so I want to know if my is it breaking up? Is the connection coming and going? Is it constant, steady, good, or does it come and go? So if you can tell me in the chat, looks like we got 3 of you online right now. If you can tell me in the chat, then I would really love to know, is the connection stable, or is it coming and going? For my part, I have a gigabit connection here from Cox Cable, and it's mostly pretty stable. So, on the other hand, my upload is let's see, someone's just getting started learning programming. What do you recommend doing? This is a great question. This is from Manharsh Mohan, and he says he's in Denver, Colorado. And he says the connection's been great so far. Manharsh has been on since the beginning of my broadcast, or at least for the last 10 minutes. Oh, and Abdul says he's in England, and he says that the connection is very, very stable. And I appreciate that, Abdul. Thank you. So for somebody just getting started, it depends really what it is that you're asking. Are you asking how to learn or how to get a job? How to get a job, I have no idea. I haven't had a job in 20 years, besides this doing the online courses. And I know that the job market changes a lot all the time. My recommendation for anybody trying to accomplish anything is always model success. In other words, find somebody. Hi, Don from Colorado. I appreciate that. Sounds like I'm good and stable here in Colorado. So model somebody who's been successful. In other words, find somebody who has already achieved what it is that you would like to achieve, and pick their brains. Ask them what to do. And in this case, you're asking me, which is probably a good place to go. I can tell you how to become good at programming. I probably cannot tell you how to become good at finding a job. And here he followed up and he said, "How to learn programming?" Haha. Yes. So Manharsh, what I recommend is that you pick a project that you would like to accomplish. Something relatively simple, unless you have all the time in the world, then go for the ambitious. But something relatively simple, I've got a few of them that I've done over the years, and there's examples of them in some of my courses. Like I wrote it when I wanted to get really good at object-oriented programming. I pulled out a C++ compiler, and I decided that I wanted to learn how to convert numbers into words. In other words, if I say 4,382 and I write that out in numbers, I would like the computer to come back with the words from 382. And then it took it a step further, and I wanted it to tell me the time, but not just tell me that it's 3:45. I wanted it to tell me it's 3:45. And so there was all kinds of great logic experiments and logic tricks and all of that. One of the very first things that I remember when one of the very first computers that I ever played with, and it was an old PD-11. It was back in the 70s. And the only compiler that it had was C. Actually, before that, it only had a, thank you, Jesus. Jesus is telling me that the connexion is excellent for both audio and video. And so one of the first projects I did was to convert hexadecimal numbers into decimal and back and forth. And then I expanded that into any base between base 2 and base 26, or however many letters are in the alphabet plus 10. And so this was like a little project for me to learn programming, and it actually took me a few months at first. Today I could probably do it in an hour. But this is how you learn programming, honestly. And with the internet and being able to ask a question of Google and to get back pages and pages of other people's experiences and videos on YouTube and everything, probably be even easier. All I had was the manuals from DEC for the PDP-11. DEC is Digital Equipment Corporation, who used to make mini computers before they were bought out by, they were bought out first by Compaq and then by, I think, HP, and they're pretty much gone now. But they were the big computer company back in the 70s, DEC. So, that's always my recommendation, is to, grab a project, take your time, beat your head against the wall for the first few hurdles are going to be the toughest. Like, how do I make the compiler work? How do I get text on the screen? How do I get the value of a number? These things are the fundamentals, but you'll become good at those very quickly. And then the rest of it, the next steps, they get easier and easier to go by. I hope that answered your question. I hope that helps you. Any other questions? I love this, by the way. I'm really enjoying this. And I'm looking forward to doing these on a regular basis. I think this will be a lot of fun. I think it'd be really great if there was a way where I could see you and I could hear your voices and even maybe have a conversation with you. But that's probably another generation of this stuff down the road. I've got, I'm going to try to pronounce your name anyway, even though you told me that it's VP. You're welcome, Manharsh. Manharsh says it was a helpful answer. I appreciate this. So I'm going to try to pronounce your name. I hope I do it justice. I'm going to say Vaibhav Patke. And you're from Columbus, Ohio as well. So we've got two from Columbus, Ohio. Was the other one from Columbus? I thought so. Or maybe it was from Colorado. I don't remember, and I'm not seeing it in the chat anymore. And the Python course, yeah, excellent. Cloud platforms, I use AWS. AWS is taking over the world. We know that Amazon is becoming one of the most powerful companies in the world for a lot of reasons. My website is on AWS. You can see my website here at bw.org, along with that very old but handsome picture of myself. That runs on AWS. I consider myself primarily a systems programmer. And so you'd think that I'd know a lot about these back ends, but I just really haven't paid a lot of attention beyond what I need for my purposes. So if I were to do a cloud back end type of course, I would start with AWS because I think, between them and Microsoft Azure and maybe a little bit of what's her name down in Texas, Rackspace, between those three, but AWS is probably bigger than the other two put together. Abdul has another question about modern programming languages. We know modern languages are high-level languages, he says. Now they hide huge low-level computing details from modern programmers, unlike, or at least programmers from the 70s. If you see it this way, when you find that we modern ones know less about such low-level programming going under the hood, how do you evaluate this? Don't apologize for asking questions. It's what we're here for. I'll tell you, Abdul, if I were a university professor today and I were teaching Programming 101, I would start with assembly language. First thing I learned, actually my very first computer was an Intel 4004 microprocessor. This was in 1971, I think. And it was just a chip that I bought through the mail. And then I went to Radio Shack and I got one of those little solderless breadboards where you could, plug the chips in and plug the wires in. And I needed for memory, they didn't have solid state memory yet. And so I wound magnetic wire or copper wire around ferrous beads, and this became what we called core memory back then. You hardly ever see it today. I don't think anything is using core memory today, and so at first I had to toggle switches and LEDs, and even with the PDP-11 at first, I had to load a bootstrap loader, and so this wasn't even an assembler. This was just putting the binary codes into the computer. Hi, Andy from Germany. Excellent. It's great to see you. And I learned a lot from getting that close to the machine and then using an assembler and then using C. I would not spend a lot of time on assembly language, but I think it's important that we know how registers work and how memory management works. And then I would get people fluent in C before I went to any of the high-level languages. If you are expert at C, and I'm not even talking about C++, I'm talking about C, which is a language so small. The manual for C, this original C programming book by Kerner and Ritchie, people call it KNR today. It's like 100 pages. And that's the whole, the language is very, very small. It's relatively simple, but you have some abstract ideas you have to understand. You have to understand, the difference between memory and memory addresses and values and variables and identifiers and things like that. And if you get good at those things by learning a language like C, and if you can write some basic, fundamental, simple programs in C. When you then take that experience and you go to something like JavaScript or Python or one of these high-level libraries, or Atom is something that I'm looking to learn soon. Then you're going to have a much better understanding, and you're going to have a much better idea of what's going on, and I think it'll make you a better programmer. Thanks for the question, Abdul. I really appreciate that. And if there's anything else, I'll give you guys a moment or so to ask me another question if you got it. Like I said, I'm going to schedule these in the future, and I'll set aside an hour or so for them in the future, and I think that'll serve us well, and then we'll go from there. We'll see how popular it gets and how often we want to do them. This time of day, the time of day thing is a bit of a problem for me because I know that a large amount of my audience is literally spread around all the time zones around the world. I've got a large number of followers in Egypt. I have a large number of followers in Europe. I have a large number of followers in East Asia and in South Asia. I have, of course, I've got a large number of followers in the United States. I have followers clearly from Central America. And I know that I've got some people in South America. I mean, literally every continent around the globe. And so to pick a time of day that's going to be, like right after work, but maybe before dinner time, in all these different places, that's not really possible. So today I picked a time that was convenient for me, because this is one of my favorite times of the day to do things like this. Because where I live in Las Vegas, it's now 3:30 in the afternoon, 3:25 in the afternoon. And so we got started at 3. That's 6 p.m. on the East Coast of the U.S. So that, it's daytime in the U.S., but most people are at work. On the other hand, you get over to England and it's the late evening. Abdul is asking me, I got a couple questions here. So first, Manharsh, some of my favorite musicians. I grew up listening to rock and roll, and yeah, it's 025 Central European time right now, according to Ali. Where are you, Ali? Obviously I grew up listening to rock and roll. I grew up listening to the Beatles and the Beach Boys and that stuff. But also at the same time, my dad was really into jazz. And so we were listening to Miles Davis and Ella Fitzgerald and Oscar Peterson. When I was a teenager, I got much more into jazz. There was a club here in LA down in the South Bay called the Lighthouse. And this was at a time in the mid-'70s when, or in the early '70s, when jazz was very much on the decline. Very few people were listening to jazz. And this guy started a record label called Pablo. And he would take his artists and tour them around these little clubs. And we got to see Joe Pass, Oscar Peterson, Ray Brown, Ella Fitzgerald, all these great musicians, Herb Ellis. And I got really into that. At the same time, some of the players who had played with Miles earlier, John McLaughlin, Billy Cobham. So I was listening to a lot of modern jazz in the '70s, and I completely missed the disco thing, which, I do not regret. Obviously, I listened to a lot of Jimi Hendrix and the Guitar Heroes. Today, I think Jeff Beck is probably one of the most creative musicians playing today. That's my taste is a little bit eclectic. Ray Charles, there's no kind of music that I don't like. I'll listen to country, I'll listen to rock, I'll listen to classical, I'll listen to anything, as long as it's got something interesting about it that I can latch onto and I can say, ooh, that's cool, I haven't heard that before. Because that's really what I look for in music or in art or in anything. I have a very short attention span, and you got to catch my interest with something unique. Simple question, bass or guitar? You'll see both up there on my wall. I think I've got 1, 2, 3 basses and 5 guitars. I do play bass. If you go to bw.org, you'll see one of my latest posts is a music video that I did. I've been doing a lot of music this year because I actually haven't left my house in 11 months. I've just been, creativity has been my life. And so you'll see a music video with me playing guitar and bass, but I also wrote the orchestrations and the arrangement for the horns. It's got horns in it. It's an old rock and roll song called Boney Maroney. That's a lot of fun. So if you go to my website at bw.org, and if you're at the, I can't do it there. Hang on a second, because if you're at the home page, which is this page, and you click on this one, excuse me, and you just, you scroll down here a little bit, you'll see this is actually a YouTube video, and there's me playing a guitar, there's me playing a bass, and there's me playing another guitar. These guys are playing horns. I wrote the arrangements for them. And, when I was a kid, back in the 50s and 60s, you go to school, one of the first things they teach you is how to read and write music. Today, they don't do that. And so I'm one of these rare guitar players that can actually read and write music, and it's served me well. I mean, in these last few years, I've been learning a lot more about arranging, and it's been very exciting for me. I love learning, and music is just another form of math, and I love math. And so, learning to do these close harmonies, the open harmonies, and I've been learning a lot. I've got a great mentor who used to be a professor at a university. Good friend of mine, Lee Tomboulian, back in New York City. And, these days with Zoom and everything, New York City is as good as next door, except for the time difference. All right, anything else? You guys have been a lot of fun. I've really appreciated this. Oh, and by the way, half of those guitars up on the wall back there, where is it? Over here. I built them. I built them myself. I also build guitars. This is one of my latest builds. It's it's based on a Stratocaster shape, but it's got two humbuckers, and it's got a floating bridge, which I really love, and these cool banjo tuners, which just I think especially for a Strat-shaped headstock, they make it a lot easier. They're also very, very stable tuners. Oh, hey, David. Old friend here, David Dew. How you doing? Good to see you. We're just about wrapping up here unless anybody's got any more questions for me. Thank you so much. This has been incredibly helpful to see how this works, to get a feel for how the flow of it's going to go, but mostly for the technology to know that y'all can hear me well. Let me just tell you a little bit about my setup here. My computer is it's a Mac Pro. It's one of the new ones. I bought it January last year. So it's the cheese grater. It's upgraded with all kinds of hard drives and expansions and stuff. This setup would work with a Mac Mini or with a laptop or with anything. I'm using a service called Restream.io, which is at restream.io. I might have a graphic here from them somewhere. Just a second. There we go. Let's see. Is that it? No, that's not it. Here. Anyway, it's Restream. It's spelled like that, RESTREAM.io. For the video, I'm actually using a cheap Logitech, well, not a cheap one, it's like a middle Logitech webcam. Because I'm using a Mac Pro, it doesn't have a built-in screen, it doesn't have a built-in webcam or anything. So I've got these BenQ monitors, two of them 4K monitors, and this camera here is a Logitech 1080p. That's all it says on it. It's not like their most expensive one by far. In the future, I'm actually thinking I'll probably take a DSLR like this. Where are we here? Yeah, like one of these mirrorless DSLRs. I've got a few of these hanging around. I bought them for shooting my wedding. And so that's the video side of it. For the audio side of it, I found that just plugging the microphone into the audio interface. So here I've got a Focusrite audio interface. I use it for my music, right? This is an SM7B, a Shure SM7B microphone. These are very popular for this purpose. They're really designed for voiceover work. And so it's great for this. It's designed for this kind of an application. And I had it already. But it wasn't working very well plugged directly into the Focusrite. So I went into my garage where I've got a lot of old electronics. And I found this rack mount Rolls mic preamp thing with 8 channels and a mixer. And I took that and I to get the level of the sound up, because this mic is actually really, really low level. And then I plugged that into an old hardware compressor on very low compression settings. It's not going to be very extreme like that. So it doesn't have a lot of pumping, but it still keeps the level. So I can get really close and I can talk like this, or I can get far away and talk like this. And it's not really going to change the level very much in your ears. And then all that goes into the Focusrite, and that goes USB, a long USB cable all the way around the room into the back of my computer. My computer is actually behind my desk over here because it was too big. When I bought it, I wanted the rack mount version because I got racks everywhere, but they hadn't released the rack mount version yet. It came out a month after I got mine. Soda water. I promise, I've been sober for 41 years. Anyway, so that's the setup here. I think what I'm going to do is I tried to use OBS. OBS is a little bit more flexible for things like the overlays on the screen and such, and this thing, it keeps like taking off my my screen overlays. There we are. And I may in fact go back to OBS, but I don't know, the audio wasn't easy to get set up, and it was just a little bit more technology than I really prefer outboard electronics than software stuff. And so what I'm thinking I might do, I've got a little Blackmagic box that does video switching, and I might decide to use that. I don't know. But for now, this works, and I'm happy with it, and I'm glad that we were able to do this. You all seem to be able to see me and hear me pretty well, and I think that is what's important here. David Dew is saying, get Al Schmidt's book Behind the Music on Amazon. I will look into that. I don't know what that's about, but I will put it on my list. Thank you, David. And anyway, I think we are pretty exhausted with the questions. And as you can tell, my voice is starting to go. I think next time I'll have a nice hot tea here to help with my voice, and maybe some lozenges. And we got one new message. 23 Granny. Yeah, I don't know what that is, but 24 Skidoo. Anyway, y'all been great. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I will schedule the next one sometime in the next few days. I'll schedule it, and I'll set it up as an event on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. 23 Grammys engineering. Oh, yes, I am enjoying learning a lot about engineering and about mixing and mastering. I think my latest piece, my Boney Maroney piece, is the best that I've done with the mixing and mastering. It actually, I think it sounds pretty hot. Abdul, I don't know when we are going to have the next session. It will be sometime in the next couple of weeks, probably before February 15th. But we will see when it will be. Oh, also, it's worth mentioning that my SQL course on LinkedIn Learning is free until the end of the month. So if you're interested in learning SQL, head over to LinkedIn Learning and check that out. All right. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate you. And we will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.